Catherine Martinez came to visit me. She was very cunning. She was very smart.
What if Cleopatra was buried somewhere else entirely? We don't have the full story.
For more than 2,000 years, Cleopatra's final resting place has been one of history's greatest mysteries. Archaeologists have long searched, but every clue seemed to vanish beneath the sands. Then, hints of a hidden tomb emerged, and the world held its breath. What was discovered inside was beyond imagination. Treasures, secrets, and evidence that could rewrite history itself. Every artifact seemed to whisper her story, revealing a side of the last pharaoh no one expected. The revelations shocked the entire world. The queen who refused to die. For more than 2,000 years, Cleopatra VII has remained a name that carries power, beauty, and mystery. She was the last pharaoh of Egypt, a queen who stood against one of the greatest empires in history and refused to be forgotten. Yet for all that we know about her intelligence, her political skill, and her tragic death, one question has haunted historians for centuries. Where is her tomb? Cleopatra ruled Egypt from 51 BCE to 30 BCE, during a time when the world around her was rapidly changing. She came from the Greek Macedonian Ptolemaic dynasty, the line that ruled Egypt after Alexander the Great's conquests. But Cleopatra was different from her ancestors. She did not simply wear the crown of Egypt, she became Egyptian. She learned the local language, worshipped the gods of the Nile, and publicly called herself the living form of the goddess Isis. To her people, she was not just a ruler, she was divine. When Rome rose to power and Egypt's independence was threatened, Cleopatra used her intelligence and charm to form alliances that would shape history. She first joined forces with Julius Caesar and later with Mark Antony. Together, Cleopatra and Antony ruled as king and queen, uniting love and politics in a way that terrified their enemies in Rome. But their union could not withstand the might of Octavian, who would later become the Emperor Augustus. According to ancient sources such as Plutarch, when Antony's forces were defeated and he took his own life, Cleopatra was captured. Refusing to be paraded through Rome as a trophy, she chose her own death. The story says she held an asp, a small but deadly cobra, to her breast and let its venom end her life. Some scholars still debate how true this version is. Others suggest poison or another secret method. Yet whatever the truth, Cleopatra's end was as dramatic as her reign. But even death could not erase her completely. Roman accounts claimed she was buried in a tomb fit for a queen, a grand resting place said to hold both her and Mark Antony together for eternity. Still, no one ever recorded where it was. That silence in history became an obsession for archaeologists and explorers. The tomb of Cleopatra became one of the greatest mysteries ever known. Over the centuries, explorers searched across Egypt, from Alexandria's ancient ruins to the temples near the Nile Delta. Every discovery turned out to be a disappointment, every clue a dead end. Ancient writings offered only fragments of truth. Egyptian priests described her as a bride returning to Osiris, suggesting that her burial was part of a sacred ritual, a union between the living goddess and the god of the afterlife. Some believed she was buried in secret to protect her from enemies. Others thought her tomb was lost forever beneath the shifting sands of Egypt. For generations, the mystery slept beneath the desert, waiting for someone to look in the right place. Then, in modern times, technology began to give new hope. Scans of the ground near Alexandria showed strange patterns beneath the earth, shapes that seemed too precise to be natural. Could these be the traces of something ancient, something royal? Archaeologists began to suspect that the answer to Cleopatra's tomb might not lie in the heart of Alexandria as once believed, but somewhere unexpected, somewhere hidden, where the desert still keeps its secrets. What those new scans revealed beneath the Egyptian sands would change everything we thought we knew about Cleopatra. The desert that moved. West of Alexandria, near the shimmering edges of Lake Mariat, lies a landscape where history and myth seem to breathe together. This is the site of Top Osiris Magna, an ancient temple complex built to honor Osiris, the Egyptian god of resurrection. For centuries, the winds of the desert swept across its ruins, burying columns and statues beneath shifting dunes. Few believed it still held secrets. But in 2005, a Dominican archaeologist named Dr. Kathleen Martinez arrived with a daring theory, one that would set off one of the most mysterious digs in modern archaeology. Dr. Martinez was fascinated by Cleopatra's story since her youth. As an adult, she left her legal career to study archaeology, driven by a single belief, that Cleopatra's tomb was not lost forever. Unlike others who searched in Alexandria's ruins, Martinez thought the queen's final resting place must be somewhere symbolic. Cleopatra had always identified herself with Isis, the goddess who brought life back to Osiris. If she truly saw herself as the living Isis, wouldn't she choose to be buried beside Osiris himself? The temple of Osiris Magna, devoted to that god, seemed the perfect place. Her theory was bold, even controversial, but it began to gain attention. Ancient records hinted that Cleopatra's last days were spent near this region.
The temple's inscriptions, its proximity to the sea, and the presence of Greco-Egyptian artifacts all added weight to her claim. Excavations revealed evidence of the Isis-Osiris cult, including amulets, coins bearing Cleopatra's image, and carvings linking royal figures to divine rebirth. Slowly, belief turned into possibility, but the land around Osiris Magna held more mysteries than anyone expected. Geological surveys revealed that the coastline had shifted dramatically over the centuries. What was once fertile land had partly sunk, and parts of the temple complex might now lie beneath the water of Lake Mariot. The desert itself had changed shape over time, swallowing ancient pathways and burying structures under layers of sediment. In recent years, a new expedition returned to the site with advanced technology. Teams of geologists and archaeologists arrived to scan the region beneath the sand, hoping to map what lay hidden. As they set up their instruments, strange readings began to appear. Sensors detected faint, rhythmic vibrations beneath the ground, repeating every 42 seconds, the exact number that, in Egyptian mythology, represented the judges of the afterlife. At first, the scientists thought it was a mechanical glitch, perhaps an echo from distant machinery or tremors from underground water flow, but the pattern was steady and precise, unlike anything natural. Then, something eerie happened. The sand began to move. At first, it was barely noticeable, a subtle ripple across the dunes. But soon, the surface shifted rhythmically, pulsing in perfect time with the underground vibrations. Cameras placed around the site captured the sand trembling as if alive. Local villagers warned the team not to disturb what sleeps below. They spoke of an old belief that the ground there was cursed, that disturbing it would awaken the spirits buried beneath. The scientists dismissed the warnings as folklore, but as the tremors grew stronger, fear crept in. Some workers refused to sleep near the site. Equipment malfunctioned without reason, and power lines flickered in the night. The expedition leaders, desperate for answers, contacted Dr. Kathleen Martinez. When she arrived and reviewed the data, she grew silent. Her eyes fixed on the thermal scans, tracing the outlines of the buried corridors.
Finally, she said, "If this is what I think it is, we are standing above something she wanted us to find." The next morning, under Martinez's direction, excavation began. Within days, the ground cracked open. The sands that had once hidden history parted to reveal smooth, ancient stone. The markings on it were not random. They were deliberate, carved by human hands thousands of years ago. The team realized they had uncovered the entrance to something vast, something untouched by time. Little did they know how far beneath the surface they would have to go, or what they would find waiting in the darkness below. The temple that spoke in 2 languages. The excavation site at Osiris Magna looked like a doorway to another world. The team brushed away centuries of sand to reveal a temple unlike any they had seen before. Its stones were weathered, but its spirit still breathed through the carvings and symbols that covered its walls. This was no ordinary ruin. It was a temple built for gods and kings, and perhaps for Egypt's most powerful queen. The deeper they dug, the clearer it became that the structure was ancient yet carefully planned. The entrance was aligned with the rising sun, just as many Egyptian temples were, symbolizing rebirth. Inside, the walls bore inscriptions to Osiris, the god of resurrection, and Isis, his divine consort. The connection struck everyone immediately. Cleopatra had often called herself the living Isis and had styled her rule around the goddess's image of love, fertility, and eternal life. If she had chosen a final resting place, it made sense that she would seek to lie close to Osiris, the god who conquered death. But the real surprise came when they examined the inscriptions more closely. Side by side with the Egyptian hieroglyphs were lines of ancient Greek script, carved with equal care and artistry. This was an extraordinary discovery. Temples from this era rarely mixed the two languages, especially in sacred places. It was as if the builders wanted to speak to two worlds, the Egyptian priests who worshipped the old gods, and the Greek rulers who governed Egypt after Alexander the Great's conquest. Dr. Kathleen Martinez immediately understood the significance. Cleopatra had ruled between these two civilizations. She was Greek by blood, but Egyptian by heart, the bridge between two cultures that rarely saw eye to eye. These dual inscriptions were not an accident. They were a message. The temple itself mirrored Cleopatra's identity, half Greek monarch, half Egyptian goddess. As the team moved deeper inside, their lights revealed carvings of Isis cradling Osiris beneath a canopy of stars, the symbol of eternal union. Small altars lay scattered across the floor, covered in faint traces of blue lotus resin and bitumen, substances once used in royal embalming. Even after 2,000 years, the faint scent of ancient oils still lingered in the air. Every artifact seemed to whisper that this place had been touched by royal hands. Then came the most astonishing discovery of all. In a narrow chamber behind the main hall, archaeologists uncovered a sacred trench filled with coins and offerings. Over 300 coins, each bearing Cleopatra's face, were found buried together. Some showed her crowned as a pharaoh. Others depicted her side by side with Mark Antony. Their preservation was remarkable. The symbols of her reign, an eagle, a serpent, and the star of Isis, gleamed faintly beneath the desert dust. It was as if Cleopatra herself had left behind a trail, a silent confirmation that this temple was part of her final story. The team began to wonder whether the queen's tomb could truly be nearby. But amid their excitement, strange readings began to appear once again. Instruments that had been monitoring ground vibrations detected a familiar rhythm, the same 42-second pulse that had haunted the site since the beginning. The hum grew stronger inside the temple's inner chambers. It seemed to echo through the floor, faint but constant, like a heartbeat trapped beneath the rock. To investigate, engineers set up radar scans across the foundation. The images that appeared on the monitors left everyone speechless. Beneath the temple floor lay a formation that stretched far beyond the visible structure, a system of passages carved deep into the limestone. The tunnels appeared deliberate, symmetrical, and too precise to be natural. Dr. Martinez studied the scans in silence. "This isn't just a temple," she finally said. "It's a gateway." The workers exchanged uneasy glances. They had unearthed temples before, but this felt different. The hum under their feet, the perfect alignment of the corridors, and the sheer depth of the formation all pointed to something far greater hidden below. They prepared to dig again, unaware that what waited under the temple floor would challenge everything they knew about Egypt's ancient world. Beneath the temple's floor, the instruments had picked up anomalies, a tunnel system. But what did it lead to? The impossible tunnel. By late 2022, excitement was rising around the top of Cirrus Magna site. After years of digging through stone and sand, Dr. Kathleen Martinez and her team made an announcement that shook the archaeological world. Beneath the temple, hidden deep in the bedrock, they had discovered a tunnel stretching over 1,300 meters, about 4,281 feet long and nearly 2 meters high. Carved directly into solid rock, it was so perfectly straight and level that even modern engineers found it hard to believe it could have been built more than 2,000 years ago. The first radar scans of the tunnel appeared on the monitors as faint lines, weaving beneath the temple and extending toward the coast.
When the team finally broke through a narrow shaft to send a camera inside, they saw smooth walls glistening with moisture. The tunnel was silent and dark, yet unmistakably man-made. The footage left the room frozen in disbelief. Every contour of the passage suggested precision and purpose. Whoever had carved it did so with knowledge far beyond ordinary temple builders. Experts began to speculate about its purpose. Was it part of a hidden burial system? A ritual corridor meant to carry offerings from the temple to the sea? Or could it have served as a secret route for transporting royal remains? Some believed it connected directly to the ancient port that once stood near the coast, now buried beneath Lake Mariout's waters. Geological data revealed that much of the area had sunk over centuries of flooding and earthquakes. What had once been dry land at Cleopatra's time was now partially submerged. This revelation offered a fascinating theory. If Cleopatra had truly wanted to hide her tomb from Roman invaders, she might have chosen a burial site accessible only through this hidden passage, a sacred route linking the temple of Osiris to the sea, symbolizing her eternal voyage to join the gods. The tunnel, then, could have been part of her grand plan, designed to protect her resting place forever. As the team advanced deeper into the passage, they found signs that others had once walked there. The air was heavy with the smell of limestone and salt. In the lower sections, traces of black resin appeared on the walls, possibly remnants of torches or oil lamps from ancient processions. Even more surprising were fragments of pottery, bits of stone seals, and delicate shards of faience jewelry scattered near alcoves along the sides. Each item seemed to whisper of rituals long forgotten. In one section, the team discovered a small chamber filled with sand and debris. Hidden beneath it were 2 mummies with golden tongues, a rare burial practice from the Greco-Roman period. Priests had once placed golden tongues in the mouths of the dead so they could speak to the gods in the afterlife. The find confirmed that the tunnel and its connected chambers were used for high-status burials, possibly even royal ones. The tunnel's architecture grew increasingly complex. At certain points, it curved gently downward, its walls decorated with symbols resembling ankhs, lotuses, and serpents, signs of life, rebirth, and divine protection. Water seeped in from cracks above, glimmering under the lights like moving glass. Yet through it all, the passage remained perfectly stable, its design more advanced than many modern tunnels of similar length. After weeks of careful excavation, the team reached the tunnel's end.
There, sealed behind a wall of fused stone and mud brick, was something they had not expected: a massive chamber, circular in shape, with readings that indicated it was hollow within. The instrument showed a faint rise in temperature around it, suggesting trapped air or chemical activity inside. As Dr. Martinez examined the data, her voice trembled with awe. "This," she said, "might be the last door between us and the truth." No one spoke. The workers stood in silence, staring at the sealed barrier that had kept it secret for more than 20 centuries. The air felt heavier, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. When the team finally reached that sealed chamber, what they uncovered would turn the mystery from a question of where Cleopatra was buried to why her tomb was hidden in the first place. The black sarcophagus. When the final stones were pried loose, a rush of ancient air escaped, carrying the heavy metallic scent of age. As the desk cleared, their flashlights illuminated something that made everyone freeze. In the center of the chamber stood a massive black granite sarcophagus, carved from a single stone and polished to a mirror-like finish despite the centuries that had passed. It shimmered faintly under the light, giving off an oily reflection that made it seem almost alive. The lid was sealed shut with hardened resin and lead, both substances once used in royal burials to protect the bodies from decay and from disturbance. The symbols carved into the sides were both Egyptian and Greek, a dual language that mirrored the identity of Egypt's last queen. Around it, the walls were adorned with fading scenes of Isis and Osiris, surrounded by symbols of rebirth: the lotus flower, the Ankh, and the rising sun. Dr. Kathleen Martinez and her team approached with awe. This was unlike anything they had ever seen. The measurements matched descriptions of royal burials from the late Ptolemaic period, and the combination of Egyptian and Hellenistic artistry suggested it was built for someone of unmatched significance. Could this be what they had been searching for? Cleopatra's final resting place? Cautiously, the team began to lift the lid using cranes and pulleys. The sound of metal against stone echoed through the chamber, a deep rumble that made the ground tremble.
As the seal finally broke, a warm wave of air rushed out, heavy with the smell of ancient oils and something sharp that stung their eyes. Inside lay two figures wrapped in golden threaded linen, their faces covered by masks fused into the fabric by time and heat. Between them rested a bronze cylinder, etched with spiral designs and faint traces of hieroglyphs. Even through the wrappings, it was clear that one body was male and the other female, and that their positioning was deliberate, side by side, arms nearly touching. The female's jewelry caught the light first. Around her neck gleamed an Isis pendant, the wings of the goddess outstretched protectively across her chest. On her wrist coiled a blackened cobra-shaped bracelet, its head raised as if ready to strike. Dr. Martinez bent closer, her breath unsteady. The cobra had long been Cleopatra's symbol, the very creature that, according to legend, had delivered her death. Then came the discovery that silenced everyone. The man's chest cavity had been opened and filled with a hardened mixture of resin and mercury, a rare and dangerous substance used in ancient times for purification rituals. His ribs had been bent outward, suggesting an intentional act rather than decay. The embalming style was unique, perhaps symbolic, as if those who buried him wanted to ensure he would never rise again. Every clue pointed toward the identities of these two figures, Cleopatra and Mark Antony, reunited in death as they had been in life. Still, caution lingered. Scientific analysis had not yet confirmed the DNA, and many experts remained skeptical. There was no written record stating Cleopatra was buried here. Some scholars argued that she would have been interred in Alexandria, closer to her palace, not far out in the desert. Yet others countered that this secrecy was exactly the point. The Temple of Osiris, the god of resurrection, was the perfect symbolic refuge for a queen who saw herself as his living counterpart. Dr. Martinez looked around the chamber, her expression a mix of wonder and dread. "This isn't the end," she whispered. "Something lies beneath this." The team exchanged nervous glances. They had come so far to find the tomb of a queen, but perhaps, just perhaps, they had awakened something she wanted to keep hidden forever. Behind the sarcophagus lay one more chamber, one that could rewrite everything we know about antiquity's greatest queen: the Circle of the Dead. When the black sarcophagus chamber was finally mapped and documented, the team turned their attention to a smaller passage branching off from its far wall. The corridor was narrow and uneven, its ceiling low enough for the workers to have to crouch as they moved through.
The air was thick and dry, carrying a faint metallic tang that stung the throat. Each step forward stirred centuries of dust that shimmered like gold in the flashlight beams. It was clear that this part of the complex had not been touched by human hands for a very long time. The tunnel twisted deeper into the bedrock until it opened suddenly into a circular chamber unlike anything the team had encountered before. The space was wide and symmetrical, carved with impossible precision. In the middle stood a low stone platform engraved with the Ankh, the ancient Egyptian symbol of life. Surrounding it were 36 alcoves carved into the walls, each holding a single skull, arranged with haunting precision. There were 12 skulls that appeared male, 12 female, and 12 belonging to children. All were upright, facing the central platform as though watching it in eternal silence. Their jawbones were missing, and the remaining bones had been coated with a thin layer of gold dust that sparkled faintly under the lights. The eerie stillness of the room pressed on everyone's chest like a weight. Dr. Kathleen Martinez was the first to speak, her voice barely a whisper. "This is not random," she said. "This is deliberate placement, ritual, not burial." The team moved carefully, documenting everything. Samples taken from the bones revealed traces of blue lotus resin, the same substance discovered earlier in the temple and tunnel. It had been used in ancient Egypt during spiritual ceremonies believed to bridge the gap between the living and the divine. The discovery suggested that these remains were part of something far larger than a royal tomb. They were part of a system, a ritual structure built to maintain balance between life and death. Inscriptions along the chamber's upper walls confirmed this idea. Written in both Greek and Egyptian, they read, "They guard the passage and keep the balance." The words sent chills down the spines of everyone who read them. Were these skulls meant to protect the queen in death? Or were they guarding something else, something still hidden beneath the temple? One researcher described feeling pressure in his head, like a deep vibration behind the eyes. Another claimed he could hear a faint hum in the silence, as if the air itself was alive. The sensation was not constant, but rhythmic, matching the pulse on the monitors. Some of the workers grew frightened and refused to stay inside the room. As Dr. Martinez stood in the center of the circle, the vibration under her feet seemed to grow stronger. The instruments in her hands trembled. She turned to her team and said quietly, "This isn't a tomb. It's a mechanism." Her words hung in the still air. The skulls seemed to watch as she traced her fingers across the Ankh carved into the platform. There was something beneath it, something the ancients had wanted to seal away forever. And beneath those graves lies the real secret, the reason this place was chosen, and what it was guarding. Cleopatra's final secret. When news of the discoveries at Taposiris Magnus spread, it divided the academic world. Some experts believed Cleopatra's burial was more than a final resting place. It was a warning, a trap, or a device built to guard something sacred.
Every detail mattered. The layout of the tomb, the strange pulses beneath the earth, and the guardians described in old texts suggested that the design was not just for decoration. It seemed meant to balance life and death. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, may not have been preserving only her body. She could have been protecting the secret power, a force that might awaken if disturbed. At Taposiris Magna, the ground trembled at intervals of 42 seconds. Those who dared to step near the site felt tension in the air, a kind of energy that seemed alive. Archaeologists, treasure hunters, and historians were drawn to the site. Every find added fuel to the growing mystery. Sunken ports hinted at trade routes and secret arrivals. Hidden tunnels suggested that the pharaoh herself had planned for someone to follow clues long after her death. Coins scattered across the site hinted at offerings or messages left for the living. Every discovery seemed small on its own, but together they painted a picture of deliberate, carefully hidden secrets. Despite years of research, the tomb remained unconfirmed as of 2025, yet the evidence kept hope alive. Some experts argued it might not even be on dry land. Could the tomb lie underwater, hidden beneath Alexandria's shifting sands and tides? Others believed it might be concealed somewhere entirely unexpected, waiting for the right person with the right knowledge to uncover it. Each theory carried its own weight. Each clue raised more questions than answers. The potential significance of finding Cleopatra's tomb is enormous. It would not just solve a mystery that has lasted more than 2,000 years. It could also provide insight into the burial practices of the Ptolemaic dynasty. Scholars could learn how Egyptian traditions merged with Greek customs under Cleopatra's reign.
The tomb could reveal royal death rituals, the treatment of kings and queens by the Romans, and even how Cleopatra planned to protect her legacy from those who sought to erase her story. Every artifact, every inscription, every symbol could change what we know about her life, her reign, and the world she ruled. For centuries, Cleopatra's death has fascinated historians, writers, and explorers alike. Her story is told in countless books and films, but the truth has remained elusive. What really happened in her final hours? Where was she buried? Did she plan for her tomb to be found, or did she hide it as a safeguard against those who would try to exploit her legacy? The search continues, and the tension only grows. Every new find brings excitement, fear, and curiosity. Every stone on Earth could be a step closer to revealing a secret that has been guarded for millennia. When the tomb is finally discovered, the world may not just see the remains of a queen. It could witness evidence so powerful that it reshapes history, rewriting what we know about Cleopatra, her dynasty, and the forces she controlled. What do you think Cleopatra's tomb might really hold? Share your thoughts in the comments below.